Meta has abandoned VR. The metaverse is done. PSVR 2 underperformed and failed. Okay, pause on the doom and gloom. 2023 is going to be fantastic for VR. Here are 3 big reasons why. Number 1. Apple and Meta are determined to launch new platforms in 2023. Last year, Apple sold over 40 million iPads, 60 million AirPods, 40 million Apple Watches. Even in gaming, Nintendo sold nearly 15 million Switch units just in fiscal year 2023 alone. Meta sold 20 million units of the Meta Quest 2 headset. That's great for VR. Why does big tech care when public interest seems to be fading? Why the continued investments of billions of dollars when the consumer adoption numbers are so small by comparison? Look at the whole picture and it kind of makes sense. Apple and Meta have to chase the VR dream. There's only so many devices that you, the consumer, will upgrade or buy. They need the next big thing, so Apple and Meta of today don't become IBM and Kodak of tomorrow. Apple and Meta are racing to lock the next big platform. In Western markets, only a few major players are kingmakers: Apple or Android, iPhone or Samsung, Chrome or iOS. Apple needs to lay stake in the next frontier, and they have to do it right now, while the market is maturing with smaller players. Apple needs to groom their millions of users to associate VR with them. Even if the tech isn't 100% ready, it's all branding, and smooth branding might convince you that their VR will work seamlessly with your phone, your iPad, and your MacBook. They're not going to let Meta own that market.
Now, Quest 2 is the first virtual reality device to go mainstream, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities for people to build.
But what about Meta? Meta made the bulk of its money by selling your data. When you went anywhere on the internet and logged in with Facebook, your information was tracked and sold to any business that could pay for it. Meta followed the data crumbs of your friends and pictures and buying habits all the way to the bank. But Apple shut that down when we were allowed to choose. Consumers could opt in to whether they wanted their data sent to third parties. This was devastating for Meta. Meta, who owns no hardware, created no software that works without some other company's device, was totally at the mercy of decisions by other companies, mainly Apple. And for Meta, that was completely unacceptable. Meta bought VR long before Apple's changes, but put the VR hardware growth into warp drive when Meta started losing money. Meta gambled that owning the landscape of the future was the only way they would have a future. Meta spent billions of dollars on acquiring the best engineers and the best developers in the VR field, just so they'll have the advantage over competitors like Google and Apple. So while we watch as Meta awkwardly fumbles with what to do with that market or making the essential software to feed that market, don't let the rush of interest in AI fool you. Meta is all in on VR. We'll see how the battle for the mainstream plays out, but the Meta Quest 3 and rumored Apple headset comes out this year. Number 2. Sony is just getting started. The games are coming. Apple and Meta are going for the big mainstream market. Nintendo used to call that the blue ocean. I made another video about why Sony is the better choice for gamers over any Meta device, but the key word here is gamers. Sony decided to double down on the smaller demographic, cater to the audience that already invested in Sony and wants to pay money to play games. The reasoning is that if you already own a PS5, you're halfway there. It's easier to sell bonus hardware that plays up Sony's strengths of making high-end cinematic video games than trying to convince the mainstream that you need a headset to replace all of your other electronics. There are 30 million PlayStation 5 consoles on the market. It's the fastest selling console in Sony's history. And you need a PS5 to use the PSVR 2. If even half of those users buy the PSVR 2 over the next couple of years, that's already Quest 2 numbers. That's outstanding, considering that PSVR 1 had a lifetime number of 5 million units sold. Sony has a tremendous library of games over 20 years. They can update any of those franchises at any time, not only to sell more consoles, but more PSVR 2 headsets, which sells more consoles. It's kind of genius. Consider the PSVR 2 a soft launch. The big games that will really show off the headset, the types of games that Meta or Apple can and will never do, those will start tumbling out like an avalanche this year. Number 3. Google and Valve are still in the game, and maybe Microsoft. Google might abandon ideas publicly, but behind the scenes, something is always evolving. According to The Verge, the company is working on an AR headset to compete with Meta and Apple. And what about Valve? We mentioned them earlier. In the PC space, Valve is the premier VR innovator, but Valve has been pretty quiet since the launch and rise of cheaper wireless mobile chip-based technology, like Meta's Quest and Pico Neo from China. But about a year ago, YouTuber Sadly Is Bradley hinted that Valve might be working on something more in the VR space. Since Bradley's videos, Valve has released the Valve Steam Deck, which is a powerful handheld PC gaming device. It's portable gaming without any graphical compromise. But Bradley hinted at far more than just the Steam Deck. Valve will never abandon the PC audience, but there's obviously an audience in the lower spec mobile space. That's where Quest lives. So the challenge is, how do you bridge the two affordably? How do you please your PC audience and maintain the philosophy of freedom and flexibility? Letting users tinker with hardware and software is very Valve. So when Bradley hinted that they were working on some kind of headset that combines the power of the Steam Deck, something modular and scalable for all PC demands, it sounded outrageous. Now, not so much. The market has started diversifying. Consumers and companies are choosing their sides, making their roadmaps clearer. This is the prime time for Valve to jump in with whatever they're working on. And there's a reason that I paired Valve and Google. 2023 might be a year of alliances. I forgot to mention cloud streaming. Google Stadia was an initiative that allowed consumers to play big video games without downloading tremendous data. Just play through your browser. That's cloud streaming. Google perfected cloud-based video gaming but couldn't find a way to sell it. So what happens when a company like Valve, who specializes in PC innovation, teams up with a Google? Who knows, but that's a crazy thought. And what's Microsoft doing with Meta? That's happening this year too. I told you 2023 would be exciting. Is VR dying? Do you really think Meta is quitting VR for ChatGPT? Is everyone waiting on AR? I'd really like to hear what you think in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. Enjoy your friends and family. Befriend a stranger. Be kind to someone you don't know. And until next time, I'll see you in the future. Show out.